Look at this. Just look at this. And this. And this. Have you looked at this? And what about this? It's so neatly organized. All these books. I love them. And how about this right here? I can lay down while recording a video. Yeah, I'm so happy. This is great. Hello everybody, how are you? I am RH and welcome to this new episode of Analyzing Fiction, and welcome to my new room, to my new background, where I'm gonna be recording at least most of the videos for a very long time. I'm very happy. Yeah, this is very cool. I'm very glad about all of this, and I really hope that you like it too. Oh, of course I have more books over there, but that will come out later. So, today we're going to be talking about Blindness by José Saramago, the Portuguese author. But before we begin, these two, they're available on Amazon on digital format. So if you want to get them, feel free to do so. The links will be down below. So now we can begin talking about this book. And as always, we'll start with the P.A.O, the possible smell addiction. Its acronym, it's from Spanish. So let's begin. And the P.A.O for this book will be it smells great, but it could be better. So I'll give it a 7. 7, very solid smell right there. It could be better though. And now we can, of course, talk about our author here, José Saramago. So he was born in Portugal in 1922 to a very poor family with low resources, but he always had an amazement for literature. He was always very immersed with every single book that he could read and wanted desperately to read more, pretty much from the beginning of his life. However, at the age of 15, he was pulled out of school because his parents didn't have the money to pay for it, and he ended up going to Argentina and later on to Lisboa, where he lived for most of his life. He married at the... I don't know what year he married, but he eventually got married and had a daughter, and his first daughter was also born in the same year in which he published his first book. So his daughter was born and he published his first book, which got very positive acclaim. Various people liked it, enjoyed it, and the critics were very into the story. However, Saramago thought that his book could have been better, that it could have gone better, that he probably didn't have what was needed, what was required to create such a great book. So for over 2 decades, he dedicated himself to completely different things. He completely abandoned writing and decided to focus on other things. So this happened around the 1940s, and during this time he also joined the Portuguese socialist movement. And because of this, during the dictatorship, I don't know the name, but it'll be here, during this guy's dictatorship, he was declared a Marxist, an extreme Marxist, and because of that he suffered censorship, was fired from his job, and suffered a great period of crisis. So Saramago, during this time, he strived to survive, and this struggle helped him to develop his writing style that would eventually become so iconic and make him the great author that he has become today. So he eventually returned almost 30 years after the publication of his first book. Saramago returned and published yet another book, which also got huge acclaim. People loved it, and after that he started publishing the books that would define his narrative and his writing style for the rest of his life, and which would later be very identified with him. So these books include the Blindness, another that's called Essays on Lucidity. I don't know how that's called in English. It should be maybe Lucidity, and also various other books, some of whom became very controversial, such as The Gospel According to Jesus Christ, which I will not talk about here because today is not the review for that book. Today we're talking about Essays on Blindness, or Blindness in English, which was one of the books that granted him the opportunity to get the Nobel Prize on Literature on the year 1989, I believe. And he obtained the Nobel Prize of Literature, and after that he ended up living on the Canary Islands of Spain, where he died in 2010. So we can officially begin talking about this book right here. The Blindness story by José Saramago follows a group of people who end up becoming blind from one day to another. They just get blind, and this is a sickness that quickly escalates into an epidemic, and later on into a pandemic. Nobody knows why it happens, it just happens, and the people are terrified. So they send all these blind people who they are technically blind even though they can see only white. So it's not like they stop seeing, but they just see a white screen in front of them throughout their whole life, and even when their eyes are closed, and they are sent to this abandoned asylum, where they have to survive and try to adapt to the conditions in which they are placed. It is a very good book, especially throughout the middle, when people start to develop, to gain power and use that power to abuse from others. It is a very interesting story that seeks to show how people with eyes should behave towards people that do not have them, right? That's like the metaphor that this book tries to show. And it is a very interesting story, and with this I believe that we can officially begin my review. So as always, let us begin talking about this book with the plot. And the plot of this book is very interesting. I really like how Saramago develops the story, how each plot point leads to something even more interesting. It is a very, very, very exciting premise, thrilling premise. I really enjoy how it is developed, and especially those scenes in the asylum. Some are very, very powerful, and I really enjoyed reading them. I'm saying the word really a lot, but because it should be used. It is a very good book. And overall, this story just shows hundreds of lessons throughout its pages. It goes on talking about different situations, most of which are very attractive, very hard for some of the characters, and I believe it's one of the best books that I've read. It's truly magnificently done. I really enjoyed the plot, how the characters all fit into it, and this of course leads on into characters, but I really enjoy how every character gives the plot a different thing, right? Each character gives out a different thing that contributes to the overall running of the plot. So we can now get into characters, and something very interesting about this book is that none of the characters, none of the places, nothing gets a name. So the characters are described and differed from one another through physical characteristics like their clothing or their age, things like that, right? And that makes the book even more interesting because you feel like one of those blind people, because you do not know the faces of the people. You only know certain characteristics, like the woman of the shaded glasses, or the kid with the eye with hypermetropy, however it's said, or things like that. The medic's wife, the medic, the first blind man. Those are the different names that the characters get, and because of that you get to connect with them, but in a very different way than if you knew their names and where they live and how they act and how they look. It's a very interesting way to describe these characters, a very interesting way to define them and to show us how the blind people would feel and how we would feel if we were like them. It is masterfully done. I really enjoyed it. And well, even each individual character, as I said earlier, each individual character gains a different quirk, a different trait that helps to define their the story itself, that helps to build up on it. It's truly magnificently done. I really enjoyed it. And now we can get into the narrative. And Saramago writes very good. He is very good at developing his characters in a satisfying way, at showing us how each character interacts through fluid writing. He writes very It's a very easy to comprehend way of writing. However, probably the greatest challenge of this book are things like this. As you see, this entire page is a single paragraph. Likewise, this one, here's a paragraph break, but paragraphs tend to be huge here, just huge, and that can get quite stressful after a while because you're just reading on and actually knowing where to stop, because I don't know about your habits, but I generally stop reading when I have to go to sleep or something like that. I stop reading. First I stop the paragraph, so I end with where the paragraph ends. And when you have paragraphs that are so big, that are 6, 7, 8 pages long each paragraph, it really becomes very hard to find a good spot to finish reading, to just stop. And on top of that, even the sentences are incredibly long. Everything is so long, so hard to read, and that also helps add on into the feeling that you are one of the blind men. It just makes it all very confusing, very hard to keep on with the story, and it's incredibly done. I really like how he develops it. It's a masterful story. And so into the execution now. I really think that Blindness is a great book, one of the better books that I have read this year. It's incredible. I have adored most of the story. There were some parts here and there where I thought it was a little exaggerated, like the people who had the guns. I mean, it was threatening. They were threatening, but the woman, the wife, the medic's wife, she could have done more things to help. So yeah, parts here and there that didn't quite fit in, that could have gone differently, but overall the story is great, and because of that I'm giving it a 93 out of 100. A great book. I really like it, and I really recommend that you read it too. Anyway, this has been the first episode for season 2 of Analyzing Fiction. I truly hope that you have enjoyed watching it, as well as season 1. As I said, for the next few episodes, it's gonna be once every week, one episode per week. So that's gonna complicate things a little. Well, because things are gonna get more complicated, I'm going to publish one book a week, one video a week for a couple of episodes, and then I'm going back to the 2 episodes weekly, this format that we had for season 1. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you have enjoyed this season, this episode. All the links will be down below, and I will see you later. Goodbye.